In August 1971, 24 college students walked into a basement at Stanford University. Half of them would become guards. The other half would become prisoners. What happened next shocked the world and changed psychology forever. Within just 6 days, ordinary young men transformed into sadistic monsters and broken victims. The experiment had to be shut down early because it became too real, too dangerous, and too horrifying to continue. This is the story of how a fake prison revealed the darkest parts of human nature. Stanford psychologist Philip Zimbardo wanted to answer a simple question. Are prison guards naturally cruel, or does the system make them that way? He thought he could find out by creating his own prison in the basement of the psychology building. What he discovered was far more terrifying than he ever imagined. The setup seemed straightforward. Zimbardo advertised for male college students willing to participate in a 2-week prison simulation study. Over 70 young men applied. Each would be paid $15 a day, which equals about $116 in today's money. Not bad for a college student in 1971. The researchers carefully screened every applicant. They wanted normal, healthy, middle-class students with no criminal background or psychological problems. After extensive testing, they selected 24 men. These weren't troubled individuals or natural-born bullies. They were ordinary people, just like anyone you might meet on campus. Then came the coin flip that would change everything. Half the men became guards, half became prisoners. Pure chance decided their fate. Zimbardo wanted the experience to feel real from the very beginning. He arranged for actual police officers to arrest the prisoners at their homes. Picture this. You're sitting in your apartment, maybe watching TV or reading a book. Suddenly there's a knock at your door. You open it to find real police officers with handcuffs and arrest warrants. The prisoners were booked at the local police station, fingerprinted, and blindfolded. Then they were driven to Stanford University, where they entered a world that would break some of them within days. The basement had been transformed into a convincing prison. 6 cells, each measuring 6 feet by 9 feet, lined the hallway. The researchers had removed door handles and installed metal bars. At the end of the corridor sat a small closet that would serve as solitary confinement. They called it the hole. Every detail was designed to strip away the prisoner's identity. They wore numbered smocks instead of clothes. Heavy chains were locked around their ankles. Nylon stockings covered their heads to simulate having their hair shaved off. They were no longer John or Mike or Steve. They became Prisoner 819, Prisoner 416, Prisoner 2093. The guards received a completely different treatment. They wore official-looking khaki uniforms and carried wooden nightsticks. Most importantly, they wore mirrored sunglasses that hid their eyes. This single detail would prove crucial. When you can't see someone's eyes, they become less human. The guards could inflict cruelty without making eye contact with their victims. Zimbardo gave the guards 16 rules to enforce, but he also gave them something more dangerous. He told them to maintain order and respect using any means necessary, except physical violence. He wanted them to create feelings of fear, helplessness, and powerlessness in the prisoners. Looking back, this instruction was like handing someone a loaded weapon. The guards worked 8-hour shifts and went home each night to their normal lives. The prisoners stayed locked up 24 hours a day. This imbalance would prove devastating. On the first day, everything seemed almost playful. The guards felt awkward in their new roles. The prisoners made jokes and tested boundaries. Some guards even felt bad about giving orders to their fellow students. But on the second day, everything changed. The prisoners staged a rebellion. They barricaded themselves in their cells using their beds. They ripped off their prisoner numbers and mocked the guards. What started as harmless resistance triggered something dark in the guards. The guards called in reinforcements from the day shift. They used fire extinguishers to force prisoners away from the doors. They stripped the rebels naked and threw the ringleaders into solitary confinement. They took away mattresses, forcing prisoners to sleep on concrete floors. Most disturbing of all, they began to enjoy it. If you're enjoying this deep dive into one of psychology's most shocking experiments, make sure to subscribe. We explore the darkest corners of human behavior and the experiments that revealed uncomfortable truths about who we really are. By the third day, the transformation was complete. The guards had become creative in their cruelty. They forced prisoners to do push-ups while stepping on their backs. They made them clean toilets with their bare hands. They woke them up in the middle of the night for surprise head counts that lasted for hours. The psychological torture was methodical. Guards would give conflicting orders just to frustrate prisoners. They forced them to repeat their prisoner numbers over and over until they forgot their real names. They made them sing humiliating songs and perform degrading tasks. One guard later admitted he deliberately tried to break the prisoner's spirit. He said he wanted to see how far he could push them before they completely gave up. The prisoners reacted exactly as real prisoners do. Some became completely passive and obedient. Others fell into deep depression. A few suffered what appeared to be nervous breakdowns. Prisoner 8612 was the first to crack. After just 36 hours, he began screaming, cursing, and acting irrationally. When he asked to leave, the guards told him he was weak. They convinced him that the other prisoners were talking about him behind his back. The young man became so distressed that he had to be released. But here's the most chilling part. Even after he left, some researchers suspected he was faking his breakdown to escape the experiment. This reaction shows how completely everyone had been absorbed into their roles. The line between reality and simulation had completely disappeared. Prisoner 819 suffered an even worse fate. The guards singled him out for special punishment. They forced the other prisoners to chant, "Prisoner 819 is a bad prisoner," over and over. The psychological pressure became so intense that he began crying uncontrollably. When Zimbardo tried to comfort him, the young man said he couldn't leave because the other prisoners would think he was a bad prisoner. He had forgotten this was just an experiment. In his mind, he really was prisoner 819, and his fellow prisoners' opinions mattered more than his own well-being. This moment revealed something terrifying about human psychology. Under the right conditions, people will completely lose their sense of individual identity. They become whatever role the system assigns to them. But the guards' transformation was even more disturbing. These were the same college students who had tested as normal, well-adjusted individuals just days earlier. Now, they were inventing new forms of psychological torture. They forced prisoners to simulate sexual acts. They made them exercise until they collapsed from exhaustion. They denied them basic privileges, like using the bathroom, forcing some to urinate in buckets in their cells. One guard became so sadistic that other guards nicknamed him John Wayne for his aggressive style. He later admitted that he consciously tried to be the toughest guard possible. He said he wanted to see if he could make prisoners do anything he commanded. The most shocking part? He seemed to enjoy every minute of it. Zimbardo himself became completely absorbed in his role as prison superintendent. When parents came to visit their sons, he worried about maintaining the prison's security rather than the well-being of the participants. When a rumor spread about a planned prisoner escape, he spent hours planning how to stop it instead of remembering this was supposed to be a scientific study. The experiment was scheduled to last 14 days. By day 4, 5 prisoners had already been released due to severe psychological distress. The remaining prisoners showed signs of learned helplessness, depression, and complete submission to authority. The guards' behavior grew more extreme each day. They began to see the prisoners as genuinely inferior beings who deserved punishment. Some guards later admitted they looked forward to their shifts because they enjoyed the power they wielded over other human beings. On day 6, everything came crashing down. Christina Maslach, a graduate student and Zimbardo's girlfriend, came to observe the experiment. She watched the guards force prisoners to walk with bags over their heads, chains on their feet, and their hands on each other's shoulders. She was horrified. She told Zimbardo that what she saw was terrible and that he had to stop the experiment immediately. At first, Zimbardo argued with her. He had become so invested in his role as superintendent that he couldn't see the cruelty happening right in front of him. But Maslach's outside perspective forced him to confront a disturbing reality. He had created a monster, and that monster was consuming everyone involved, including himself. The experiment ended abruptly on day 6. When Zimbardo told the guards it was over, some actually seemed disappointed. They had grown to love their power and didn't want to give it up. The prisoners reacted with relief, but also confusion. Some had become so institutionalized that they didn't know how to function without the rigid structure of prison life. In just 6 days, Zimbardo had proven that ordinary people could become either victims or perpetrators of abuse, depending entirely on the roles assigned to them by the system. The Stanford Prison Experiment became one of the most famous studies in psychology. It showed that evil isn't born in people. It's created by situations, systems, and social roles that give some people power over others without proper oversight. The study influenced everything from military training to prison reform. It helped explain how ordinary German citizens became complicit in the Holocaust. It shed light on prisoner abuse scandals in Iraq and Guantanamo Bay, but the experiment also sparked fierce debate that continues today. Critics argue that Zimbardo influenced the guards' behavior by encouraging them to be tough. They claim the participants were simply acting out stereotypes they had seen in movies about prisons. Some researchers have tried to replicate the study with different results. A 2019 review by the American Psychological Association suggested that the guards' behavior might have been more about following instructions than genuine transformation. But Zimbardo stands by his findings. He argues that the speed and completeness of the transformation proves his point about the power of social situations. Recent documentaries and investigations have revealed new details about what really happened in that basement. Some participants now claim they were coached to behave in certain ways. Others maintain that their transformation was genuine and frightening. The debate rages on, but one thing remains clear. The Stanford Prison Experiment revealed uncomfortable truths about human nature that we're still trying to understand. It showed that under the right conditions, any of us could become the villain in someone else's story. The line between good and evil isn't as clear as we like to believe. Sometimes it's as thin as a uniform, a role, and the absence of accountability. The 24 young men who entered that basement thought they were participating in a simple psychology study. Instead, they became part of one of the most disturbing demonstrations of human behavior ever recorded. What happened in Stanford's basement didn't stay there. It revealed patterns of abuse and power that exist in every corner of our society. From corporate boardrooms to military units, from schools to government agencies, the same dynamics play out again and again. The question isn't whether we're capable of evil. The Stanford Prison Experiment proved we are. The real question is what systems and safeguards we need to prevent ordinary people from becoming monsters, and that question becomes more urgent every day, as new technologies and social structures create new opportunities for abuse of power. The basement laboratory is gone now, but the lessons from those 6 days in August 1971 continue to echo through psychology, criminology, and our understanding of human nature itself. But there's something else the experiment revealed, something even more disturbing that most people don't know about. Hidden in the research notes and recently uncovered interviews, there's evidence of manipulation that goes deeper than anyone imagined. The truth about what really happened in that basement is more complex and more troubling than the official story suggests, and it changes everything we thought we knew about this famous study.